G'day, and thanks for joining NWR's virtual healthcare conference. I'm really pleased to welcome Vitrafy Life Sciences. Vitrafy listed on the ASX in November of last year and has a mission to improve the quality of healthcare treatments by providing effective cryopreservation technology, therefore preserving life. From the company today, we have one of its co-founders, Deputy CEO and Executive Director, Brent Owens. Before I hand it over to Brent, I'll just remind you that you can submit questions through the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll get to those post the end of the presentation. But with that, I'll hand it over to you, Brent. Thanks very much.
Great. Thanks, Simon, and thanks everyone for joining. As Simon mentioned, I'm Brent Owens, one of the co-founders, Deputy CEO of Vitrafy Life Sciences, which we founded in late 2017 with two other co-founders, which we address a vital need for enhanced cryopreservation solutions. It's a big problem, which can materially improve and impact the economics of cryopreservation. Our aim and our vision is to become the global leader in cryopreservation, preserving life. What we founded in late 2017 and invented was very novel and disruptive cryopreservation technology. Technology in an industry that hasn't seen innovation for decades. We've got our own smart hardware, medical devices, and a software platform that together can materially improve the outcomes of cryopreserved materials. Superior sample outcomes, in excess of 100% improvements when compared to existing standards in some cases. We're operating in very large industries and large markets that are growing in now and into the future. And we've had very strong validation of our technology through large industry players here in Australia and also in North America, such as the US Army. We've got very broad applications for cryopreservation. Our technology can be used in both human health as well as animal health. And we have commenced commercialization in our priority application areas. These industries are growing fast, and a clear line and the problems that they have relate to our solution. We have very strong intellectual property that we created from the founding days with over 13 different patent families that have 100% ownership from the company. We're fully funded. So we completed an IPO with a successful raise of $35 million in November 2024, which is really enabling us to set up the platform for future growth with very, very near-term catalysts ahead, and the pipeline is growing in that space as well. Onto the technology. So we've created vertically integrated cryopreservation technology that addresses the major problems within the cryopreservation supply chain. This is the problem that disrupts the entire industry as it exists today. What does that mean? So we have our own novel software platform, which we call LifeChain, which is an end-to-end supply chain management system that can be used for different products such as blood, sperm, and different cell and gene therapy products. It's the brain of our system. We also have our own hardware, smart devices, our own freezing technology, so freezing devices, thawing devices, and our own consumables. And when you put those components together, you mitigate a lot of the problems that exist in the cryopreservation supply chain as it is today, end-to-end, vein-to-vein. This has enabled us to develop a very clear and robust value proposition for the market. It's driven to address the major problems in the industry, as I mentioned, the sample quality. We produce superior sample outcomes. Our third-party validation data, which you can see on the screen, shows major improvements when compared to existing processes in various applications that we're working in. One is blood platelets, a blood component that's used for emergency trauma response, always in high demand, always will be, constantly low supply and shortages, and it needs cryopreservation as a solution. There's currently about $280 million US wasted in North America per annum because of expiration that cryopreservation can help with. Expensive cost of unit and we can improve the yield by up to 100% based on the results that we've got so far. Secondly, in cellular therapy, a very rapidly forming and growing industry of cancer therapy, primarily in North America and in Asia. Very high cost of goods, disjointed process, heavily dependent on cryopreservation with a large amount of cell loss through the process, which makes it expensive, lowers the availability, and we've been able to do third-party validation, and we can retain the quality of those cells almost identical to fresh. A standard dose for that therapy is about $3 million Australian. In another core validation point we've done is in reproduction, in animal reproduction, where we've increased the post-thaw sperm motility of bull semen by up to 30% against industry best practice. This is an industry that sees about 170 million units sold annually, where the price is dependent on both the quality and the genetic line of that species, a significant opportunity for the company. And then salmon sperm fertilization. We increased the fertilization rate from what was 30% to 70%, which is comparable to fresh. And that was in a commercial environment as well here in Australia. Beyond that, we have significant benefits to our technology beyond just quality. One is cost saving, so we can improve the speed of delivery of these products by reducing processing times from hours, which is current, down to just a couple of minutes, which is significant. We don't use liquid nitrogen, which is a big problem, and an expensive problem in the industry as it exists today. And our device is portable with low power, which gives us the unique ability to put it into locations which is currently unavailable, such as remote collection centers for blood. It's because of these benefits that we believe that we're very well positioned to become the global leader in cryopreservation. And in our very short history since late 2017, we've got some good results to achieve that. So again, founded in late 2017 by myself and two other co-founders, and the vision then is still the vision now. We thought before we created the technology, if you can freeze an egg and bring it back to life, you should be able to freeze anything. That was essentially the concept. So from there, we went into one of the three phases that we've gone through of development. Phase one was really around developing the technology and protecting the intellectual property. And that's what we did quite successfully, as I mentioned earlier. Phase two was around validation and building out the value proposition. And that was done through the validation studies that I showed in the previous slide. Phase three was more recent, where it was around securing FDA registration, generating first revenues, building the team so that we were capable of commercializing the technology and growing a sustainable business, which included appointing key executives and a strong board, and then preparing for an IPO. And phase four, which is what we're in now, which is around commercialization with a number of short-term milestones ahead. We remain diligent and disciplined and very focused since the IPO, which was only in late November as well, to deliver on our objective that I mentioned earlier. So currently, we're establishing a US presence and building out the team as we speak. We're progressing the pipeline with very near-term revenue opportunities ahead. Also, completing the validation studies that we have with our collaborators, such as the United States Army phase one study on blood platelets, a critical step and a gating item on the pathway to commercialization, which we're expecting very, very soon. We're also bringing forward and fast-tracking the development of our large-scale manufacturing of our products, which we call VCU2 and LiveChain, on time and on budget. So very near-term opportunities ahead. And then just going into a little bit about cryopreservation itself. So essentially, cryopreservation has underpinned the healthcare system for decades in very, very, very specific applications that are broad and wide and growing, such as IVF. Cryopreservation makes IVF possible because of the cryopreservation of the eggs. Blood components. When you donate blood, a lot of that blood is separated and cryopreserved, and it has been for a very long time. And then the new and evolving industries, such as CAR T cell therapy and gene therapies, which is new forms of cancer therapy. These require cryopreservation and international logistics to be available for critically ill patients. These different applications, whilst long-standing and the new, really face critical challenges through the cryopreservation process because it's seen minimal advancements for decades, which really impact the quality. A lot of the time you lose between 30 and 50% of samples quality from the process of cryopreservation. This impacts the availability of these products and, importantly, the consistency. The consistency of quality impacts the quality of care, which impacts the cost and the revenue opportunities as well as a result. It's ripe for disruption. It hasn't changed for 50 years and it needs to. And that's what Vitrafy is focusing on as well. There's been some strong tailwinds that have really unearthed and identified this problem that exists within the market. There's a number of use cases that have been high profile and in the media, whether that's sperm identification or misidentification through cryopreservation that resulted in the destruction of these life-changing samples, or the failed cryopreservation process of umbilical cord blood from a baby that again resulted in multiple thousands of units being destroyed, both domestically and internationally. This is bringing the problems of cryopreservation to the surface. And it's not just operators and regulators that are taking notice of this, it's also the consumers whose products are often cryopreserved. So sophistication is being demanded, and that's where Vitrafy comes in as having some of the solution with that. And a little bit more about the technology. So LifeChain being our quality management software platform, this is essentially the brain of our solution. This is the next generation of cryopreservation workflow platforms. It is managing the sample quality from end to end, from vein to vein. It's the first piece of IP that we created, and it's got a few core functions to it. One of it is the algorithm, which you can see pictured here on the left. It's a little bit of our secret sauce. And what it does is, in the founding days, we identified problems within the sample when it was cryopreserved. Through the development of the algorithm, which takes in a series of inputs, such as the sample type, the volume of the sample, how the sample behaves, and how it needs to be cryopreserved. And the algorithm will then run a process to determine what cryopreservation conditions are best for that sample. We then have the technology, the hardware, to be able to execute on that function. So that's a really key feature of our software platform that's being built into it so that we can have scale, whether you're using that for human sperm cryopreservation or for large volumes of blood components in a blood banking situation. The algorithm can do both and all for that matter. The second key component to the software is the device control and device integration. So we've got the ability to operate our devices remotely, which is really important when you think about scale and profit margins. When you say that you can build a cookie cutter style manufactured device as the hardware, and then all of the intelligence is built into the software, which gives you the variability and the tailoring and the intelligence of the system itself, which makes a much more streamlined process when we think about commercialization and scale. And the third component is around trace and track. So again, we want to make sure that the sample retains its quality from end to end, and that includes tracing and tracking that sample as from the start until the end. All of that's driven by intelligence, and the intelligence in our smart devices. So this is our hardware that we have. All of these devices, the freezing device, the thawing device, and the consumables, can operate independent of each other and standalone units. Again, they've been developed to address the key areas in the supply chain where the most damage occurs to the sample. Our smart freezing device, it's a control rate freezing system that can be controlled by LifeChain, the software, to unlock tailoring of specific products. As I mentioned at the start, it's liquid nitrogen free, a big problem in the industry, big problem that we don't use. We can reduce processing times from hours, as I said, to just a couple of minutes, which is very important when you think about staffing and efficiency and workflow benefits. We've currently got about 13 of these devices being used in the field in both unregulated commercial environments and human health validation studies here in Australia, as well as in North America. And we have received FDA registration for this device as a Class 2 510(k) exempt medical device through the FDA. With that device, we've had extremely good user feedback, and we've taken all of that feedback on board, and now we're progressing to take that device to the next level so that it can be more profitable, more automated, more fit for purpose at scale, which is part of what we're deploying our use of funds at, is building that system, which is a program that's currently underway with milestones within this calendar year. The second device is our thawing system. So it's essentially the freezing device in reverse, which has precise protocols, very short processing time. It's a benchtop unit that can be compatible with different biological materials as well, that we have been using again in the commercial environments of unregulated environments, with over 12 devices currently being used. And then we have our own consumables. So building all of that together as a bit of a package. We have a lot of IP in this area, and we have generated significantly improved results by using Vitrafy's own packaging systems as well. As I mentioned, we've gone through the first generation and we're now building that second generation. So what you can see on the left are the versions that we currently have in use and in the field as we speak. And on the right is a design of the next generation of technology that we're building. Again, we're trying to do that to be more automated, to be more profitable, to make the margin even wider. And we're doing that in an outsourced manufacturing model whilst retaining all of the intellectual property as well. Just expanding on that slightly. So from the first version until the second version, it's going to be smaller and more fit for purpose and a broader range of industry players, learning from the customer feedback and what the market really wants. It's going to be intelligent with a lower cost of goods and a higher margin. And again, this is a major part of our use of funds through the IPO, that we're expecting to have our first release and commercialization of this device in the back half of this calendar year. That program, again, is on track, on budget, and we're really excited by the release of this product coming up. And a little bit on commercialization. Again, this is an industry that hasn't changed for decades. So if we want to disrupt the market and make change, we need to do it in a different way. We want to make the most money out of this and deploy a strategy that we believe will be most profitable as well. So what we've designed and what we've been implementing is what we call a collaboration to commercialization strategy. What we do is we try and partner with industry leaders in specific application areas that we're working in, such as cell and gene therapy, blood platelets, and animal reproduction. We complete that initial validation work. Historically, that's been an unpaid process, but now we're moving into that being a paid component of the process. And then we convert that into a larger commercial deal as well. And that's been evident with the work that we've been doing, and we're currently doing that with players such as the US military as well. Beyond that, we don't want to just sell boxes. We don't just want to sell a freezer as a piece of equipment. We want to sell outcomes. So we want to do that under a managed service model where we have essentially a monthly charge that sort of varies based on the scope and the setup for each client. And we want to start with a base level for access to the freezing equipment, some of the software, the thawing equipment, and then we'll charge the consumables on top of that and additional as well. And what that'll enable us to do is that'll give us a nice margin in year one, but then look at sort of software margins year two and beyond as well, which is something that we're really excited about moving forward too. A bit of a use case on exactly that is some work that we've done in animal reproduction here in Australia. So the animal reproduction market itself is around an $8 billion market and growing. It's one of our priority focus areas, bovine being the largest component of that, making up about 40%. But another species within that is the aquaculture species. We have got a partner in the bovine space, and we've also been working with Huon Aquaculture in Tasmania for a number of years now as well. So in 2022, we undertook the collaboration part of that process, where we went down to Huon Aquaculture to cryopreserve their sperm, their engineered sperm that they use to grow out their fish. Huon are very small. They have an annual tonnage of about 40,000 tonnes, and they only cryopreserve about 10% of their stock. They were getting about 30% fertilization on the cryopreserved milk that they had cryopreserved. So we managed to increase that fertilization rate from 30% to 70%. And then in 2023, that's when we dislodged a global competitor to complete Huon Aquaculture's breeding program under that managed service model, as I mentioned, which was very successful. And we're now seeing consistent results that are comparable to fresh. And as a result of that, we've now signed a multi-year agreement with Huon Aquaculture to be the sole provider of cryopreservation services to them. Which the new part of that's coming up in a couple of months as well. And we're looking to expand that out. Just for context as well, I mentioned that Huon do 10% of their 40,000 tonnes. Some of the other players in the aquaculture market do about 500,000 tonnes, and they cryopreserve 100% of that product. So you can see how that could multiply out quite significantly. And all the current pipeline projects have been inbound. So what we have is relationships with the US Army Institute of Surgical Research, as I mentioned, which I'll come back to in a moment. We're working with Select Sires, which is one of the largest bovine reproduction companies globally, based out of Columbus, Ohio. They produce around 26 million units of bull semen per annum, and they cryopreserve 100% of that. In late 2024, we completed a phase 1 study with Select Sires under the collaboration to commercialization strategy, where we saw a significant improvement in the bull semen results. We're now doing that same study in Columbus, Ohio, in North America in the coming months. And we're very excited for that result to come out in the very near term as well. They're a great partner, and we've really enjoyed working with Select Sires. Just on the bull semen, they sell a unit of bull semen for between around $30 and $135, depending on the quality and the genetic species of that bull as well. So we believe that with them and with success, that we will not only have more availability of product at a higher quality, but we believe because of the yield improvement that could result in more revenue opportunities for that organization and subsequently us as well as a result. We're also working in the area of cell and gene therapy, which we're getting a lot of interest being generated in that space, primarily in North America and Asia. And we're well progressed in some negotiations in that area as well, which we're expecting some near-term announcements in. And then coming back to the military. So we've got a CRADA agreement with the military, which is a cooperative research and development agreement, where they would like to undertake multiple studies, one of which is blood platelets, which I mentioned earlier. That study commenced earlier this year, and we're expecting the first phase results of that to come out in the next few weeks as well. We're just completing the final stages of that study, of which we have a high level of confidence in, and that is a gating item. So it's a very important milestone for the company and also the military, as this is a problem because the existing standard for cryopreserved platelets is only around 50% post-thaw recovery, which is why it's not really used. So we had an early stage study done here in Australia with Red Cross Lifeblood, where we got post-thaw recovery of 97.5, which was, again, a step change for that product. And now we're doing that study with the US Army as a gating item to move forward towards commercialization with them as well. Beyond that, there's obviously several negotiations and pipeline opportunities that we're working on at the moment that will continue ongoing as we continue to scale out both the team and the opportunities, primarily in North America as our focus and target jurisdiction that we're growing in. To support all of that, we have built a very powerful and trusted team of executives and board members to support our growth as a listed entity and as a global disruptor as well. We want to make sure that we've got the right people to keep the company focused, to keep it diligent, and to execute with discipline. That's a really key feature of that. And having Sonia Petering join as chair a couple of years ago has been instrumental in that, taking the company through the next phase and now as a listed entity as well. Further to that, noting we have Vaughan Weber, who's got extensive history in the public markets, Professor John McBain, who's a pioneer of IVF in Australia and very, very well respected in the industry. Simon Martin, who's got deep experience and is the new CFO that joined late in 2024. And then supported by Kate Munnings, who's the Chief Executive of Vitrafy Life Sciences, who I'm sure all very well aware of, who's current ex-Virtus Health CEO as well. So further to that, we believe that the opportunity is quite significant, and I will pause there. Thank you for taking the time. And Simon, I'll hand over to you for a little bit of Q&A. But just before that, I'll just mention that in the deck, there are a few more slides if you want to have a look about the broader market opportunity and some of the TAM data as well.
Perfect. Thanks for that, Brent. It's certainly come a long way from the cold winters of Ballarat. It's very impressive to see it all come together in the listed entity, and it sounds like there's a lot more to come. There's a number of questions just around product, which we might come back to on the email, just in the interest of time. We've probably got sort of 5-6 minutes left, but we'll focus on the execution and the commercial side of it. Business development and commercialization activities are a greater focus of the company with post-IPO and the funding secured. How are you seeing that progressing, and what are the green shoots that you're starting to see, and has FDA approval assisted those sort of discussions?
Yeah, I think FDA approval is a big thing for confidence. There's obviously the approval status that enables you to enter a market, but then there's the confidence of a potential customer or partner that is very strong validation. So to the second part of the question, absolutely, the FDA clearance has been very, very valuable for the company for multiple reasons, particularly in getting some of those green shoots, because there are plenty. It's been something that we wanted to fast track as soon as the funds settled through the IPO, and that was business development in North America. Kate and I spent some time here in January. I'm currently in North America at the moment, and there are green shoots that are really, really appearing in various different ways and areas that we're excited to deliver on and execute in the very near term.
Why are you putting such a large emphasis on CGT as a priority application area, given its fledgling status of development? And how do you compare the opportunities in that space against more commodity-focused users, i.e. blood collection centres?
I would say the cell and gene therapy is commonly looked upon as what's approved in the market. And there's only a handful of products that are approved, and that's kind of gets a stigma to it. We're not focusing on the approved products. We're focusing on the early clinical trials and the clinical trial side of it, because once you're written into one of these drugs that are approved, then you have to use that technology in the process everywhere that it's used. And there are thousands of clinical trials going on in this space. So it's not an industry that has boomed today just because of the limited approvals, but it's the industry of tomorrow that you need to get in early to secure your position in the market, because if you miss that boat, then you miss it and it's gone.
That's perfect. Maybe time for one more, Brent. You've mentioned, near-term catalysts, on a horizon of green shoots. Maybe if you just draw some attention to what we should actually look for in the next 6 to 12 months within Vitrafy.
Yeah, I think just rounding out that last point, I think executing new contracts is a focus for the company. That's a given, and that's something that we'll be focusing on. But beyond that, very near-term milestone expected with the military results. We're expecting that in a matter of weeks to come through. The second phase of the select size bull semen results to come out in this half of the calendar year as well. Further to that, in the second half of this calendar year, we're expecting the first commercialization of the second device. That's an important milestone, and the software. So there are quite a number of projects that we've got underway currently that we've got milestones in. And then there's the US expansion as well. So building out the team and expecting to hear of delivery in that space, of having a robust team here on the ground to build the business as well.
Fully funded certainly helps to press the medal on that one. That concludes the Q&A segment. I might just hand it back to you for some closing remarks if you have.
Yeah, thank you. No, I just thanks everyone for joining. Obviously, newly listed, we're a company that's founded in Australia, can be a really great Australian success story because the opportunity to disrupt is there. The technology has been created, and this is truly a global opportunity. So we're very excited to deliver, and we'll remain focused on doing that too.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Brent, thanks all for attending.
Thank
Cheers.
you.